Just recently, a lot of workplace rights cases have come before the High Court and haven't always gotten the outcome that a lot of people had hoped for. Discrimination based on gender, based on age, based on a lot of different factors. Are you looking at a more difficult set of barriers if you want to bring a workplace discrimination case today than, let's say, in the 1970s or 80s, Brent?
No, absolutely. It's unfortunately those workplace rights have been steadily eroded by the court, especially the Supreme Court. And what's really troubling about that is discrimination in the workplace is rampant. And the fact is, when you look at the statistics, Latinos have the highest workforce participation rate of any community in the country. And yet, when you start moving up the ladder in the higher paid positions, suddenly there's very few Latinos. And there's a deliberate good old boy network out there, and now they've got pretty much free reign. There's no consequences anymore unless you visually tape yourself saying, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to discriminate against all these folks, and have it on tape, and then it's incontrovertible. Otherwise, you really can't bring a disparate impact case anymore and expect the courts to defend you, which is a huge shame because, I think that people should be judged upon their merits and their productivity, not their color of their skin. And unfortunately, when that happens within our workplaces, you've got folks that are at the top that are not really qualified to be there or not the best to have in place, and our country's economy suffers, and you don't really have the true competition for a merit-based system. So, we think it's extremely concerning to us, and I think what we need to do is go back to a system where discrimination should not be allowed in the employment sphere, and folks who are qualified and show that they really deserve to have the position and were passed over because of their ethnicity should have a shot at the courts for relief.
Diana, you just heard Brent say that workplace discrimination is rampant. Are there fewer cases being brought by the EEOC, fewer cases adjudicated by high-level appellate courts because those cases are just harder to bring? Or are we in a more diverse workplace with a lot more opportunity? There may be more than one reason why we're not seeing these cases rise to the highest level. What do you think?
Well, it's certainly much more difficult to bring these cases. And it's much more difficult because a lot of these cases require intent or a showing of intent, which is obviously very difficult. So that's a higher burden.
So meaning you need proof that you can bring into court that employer A didn't promote Gladys or Jose specifically because of their status. That sounds pretty hard to get.
It is very difficult. So, obviously there's other evidence and there's, witness testimony, but I think that it's a much higher bar because you have to show that it's intent-based, and or you're going to have to show that other people were promoted while this person was not, even though they're qualified. So it's a much higher showing. I also think that there might be less of a focus on workplace discrimination cases than in the past, so that I don't think that they get as much publicity or as much focus. So it may be that we're not hearing about it as often, but I think in terms of the number of cases, they probably are steady, if not increasing, because of what Brent has mentioned. It is certainly rampant. I think it's also interesting to see the number of cases they may be dismissed. And the question too of representation. How many people who have experienced workplace discrimination actually have the opportunity to get an attorney? And they actually know their rights, to know that they can file a claim with the EEOC and know their options. Many times, especially working with the Latino community, many times people just think it's part of the job because they don't really have an option when that's not the case.
Tom, throughout the program, you've spoken about not defining people by their origins, of the primacy of the individual rather than the group and so on. But when, as Brent suggests, you look at a company with a very large workforce, a large number of Latino employees, and then when you look at the organizational chart and none seem to be able to pass a certain level within the hierarchy of the company, is it time to start looking at people in their group identity as well as their individual?
There could be bad decision making going on there. I mean, I have a different perspective on some of this, different perspective on the employment discrimination laws. I think we've got the world's historical best mechanism for eliminating racial discrimination, and it's called the free market. So if I look at this cup here, do I know the color of the skin or the language that was spoken by the person or persons who made this cup? I have no idea. I chose it because it's a good cup, or actually you chose it. I didn't bring it here.
Well, we chose it because it's a good cup.
You chose it because it's a good, you didn't choose it because of the race of the people who made it. That's what the capitalist system is all about. You put out a product that's good and you're judged on the product. And so if you go back to this business and they're making bad business decisions, even with an evil motive, which I think racism is evil. So if people are saying no Hispanics are going above middle management in this company, that's a bad business decision. But if they're on an individual basis, if they're actually holding down people with talent, they are free to escape to other companies or form their own company. They can have the Hispanic ceramic cup company and put out better cups than anybody else can. So I think all you need is a free market. If you start making illegal, bad, stupid, unwise business decisions, there's no end to that, because anybody who's worked in a business knows there is no end to the number of bad business decisions that managers can come up with.
But capitalism is extolled by some of the companies that are being brought to court as defendants in these cases. They pay their shareholders regular dividends. They're very profitable. To their point of view, it hasn't hurt their profits at all that they won't promote women beyond a certain level, that they won't promote Latinos beyond a certain level.
Yeah, in the short run, at the global level, you might not notice it, but the individual notices it. The individual woman or Latina who cannot get the kind of job that she deserves. So it makes a difference at an individual level. That's why you need the freedom for her to go to another company and get hired there.
So, Brent, don't sue. Just go someplace where you're better appreciated.
Well, I think that I believe in the free market system as well, but I also think there has to be some rules, because we've seen how free market systems run amok if there's absolutely no rules at all to the ballgame. And one of the problems is that, even if you look at the job guides, you go out and buy a book, How to Get a Job, right? They'll tell you right in the opening page that 50% of the interview is how you look. And that's true. It's very subjective. It's not about your skills. It's not how smart you are. It's not your educational background. It's how you look. And so, of course, if you look entirely different than everybody else in that company because you're a different ethnicity or a different race, that's a barrier that you've got to overcome. And to the extent that companies can get away with just systematically excluding people that look different than the good old boys that are in that company, that's a problem that the system needs some help overcoming. It's not just going to be free market principles that will overcome that. It is illegal to discriminate against somebody based upon their ethnicity. It's not just unprofitable, it's illegal as well. And the problem now is that the courts have pared back the ability to actually enforce that law. So that's the problem. It's not that it's not illegal, it is. But there should be a lower barrier to be able to bring a case and say, obviously, this person was the most qualified. You passed over him so you could hire your good old boyfriend over here who's less qualified. That there should be some justice through the courts if the company can't seem to straighten it out on its own.